Hey, what's up, Laser fans? Welcome to We Have a Take the What podcast. I am Tara Bowen Biggs, joined as always by Rose Harding. Hey, Rose.
Hi, Tara. How are you doing?
I am doing so good. I'm wearing my plaid shirt, which I got for the Plaid Out, which was the game on Friday where the Blazers won their first in-season tournament game. Like,
Yes.
it just like I didn't even expect that to happen this season, and I feel like I'm doing a really good job of managing my expectations. But like on the Blazer front, things are just rolling for me. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. So one thing, how did you live in Portland your whole life and you don't have a plaid shirt?
I mean, I've had
Like,
them before in my life. I just didn't have any now. And the best thing about this plaid shirt is it's from BiMart. And like if you're gonna go buy a plaid shirt, it should be from BiMart if you don't like already have like one in your closet or whatever.
yeah, that's a super Oregonian thing to do is to go to BiMart and buy a plaid shirt.
Totally. I sent my husband to BiMart. I was like, I need a plaid shirt. And he was like, I'm on it.
My dad was one of those like old guys who would like get me up in the morning to go to BiMart and like be pacing outside the store at like 7:55.
Yes.
And I'm like, Dad, why didn't we just stay at home for an extra 10 minutes and then come when it was already open?
Okay.
But
You grew up in Eugene, right? Which BiMart did you
yes.
go to? Did you go the one on 18th and Chambers?
Yeah. It's like,
That's
yeah, it's like 5 minutes from my parents' house.
Yeah, one of the very first things that Charlie and I ever did as a couple is we got a BiMart card together at that 18th and Chambers BiMart.
That's so amazing.
And what's really funny is totally independent of this story. My son, who just recently got married, that was like one of the first things that him and his now wife did together.
Stop it.
I know he must have listened to the stories that Charlie and I always talked to him about BiMart. So I guess it's part of our the rich romantic past of the Biggs family is BiMart is all wrapped up in there.
My dad used to take me like, so what was it, Lucky Number Tuesday? He would
Mm-hmm,
take me on
mm-hmm.
Lucky Number Tuesday. And I don't even know what we would go there to buy. My dad bought the weirdest stuff there. He'd be like, and here's a pair of shoes, and here's a shirt that I bought, and some canned food, and like the most weird, and that would we were like my fishing license.
Yes, exactly. You get a heater and you get some plants and you get a giant thing of peanuts.
That's
And you don't have to pay the Costco fee to get. So like when you're a poor college student, like you go into BiMart instead of Costco because that $35 a year that you had to pay at Costco was like unimaginable. But BiMart, $5 for a lifetime. Hello.
yeah,
Easy romantic day to spend together.
that's really funny.
Maybe we were at the BiMart at the same time at some point. We would have been there in like the 90s.
Well, I was like a kid in the 90s, so
Yeah.
I was probably there on Tuesdays with my dad.
Yeah.
Because I
So
was
we
like,
could have been
a
there at
kid.
the same time.
Probably. If you were there for Lucky Number Tuesday, we probably passed each other.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, yeah. So on the Blazers front, how are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. So like I came in with no expectations, which was very liberating, right? Because then there's no expectations for them to not live up to. You're just like, well, we're learning. This is like watching like an extended preseason that just happens to count for something. But like how much it counts to me, like didn't I don't know. It just there was nothing there. So I was just like, well, any win is great. Any progress is great. Guys individually like progressing in their skills, like that's good, even if it's still a loss. Like, and I gotta say, like, already I see like improvement among guys that like I didn't expect to see this early, especially because it's kind of a brand new landscape of players and lineups and stuff, because it's not, Dame centric. And I love it. Like Shaedon looks super comfortable on offense. Still, like, I feel like he's still finding his feet on defense, but like watching him on offense this season, I'm like, oh, he's gonna be good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can like I knew that he had the potential, and this year I can see it. And that feels really good already. And so I'm like, this is just like found money. I just found I found like $40 in my ski jacket, and I'm just gonna like hold on to that and feel good about it for now. How about you?
That's a great analogy. Is like when you find money in your pants that you put away and you're like, oh, $20 in my pocket. This is so exciting. But now we don't have cash anymore, hardly at all. So that's
No.
a much less frequent occurrence. The land of no expectations is my happy place. That is where I thrive. I thrive on no expectations. And I think about this frequently because the time that I spent on Blazers Edge with Danny Meringue, I learned so much about basketball from the time that I spent with Dan. But the thing that I'm always most annoyed about is he made me raise my expectations. He just because he's one of those people that has really super high expectations about things. And so I would be like, oh my God, I must be a terrible person because I have really low expectations on things. I should really raise my expectations and expect people to meet those expectations. And now I'm like, why on earth did I get where did that thinking come from? My happy place is a low bar that people can jump over, and I can be delighted about that. And like that's where we are this year. I need your help with Shaedon. I need a new nickname. For me, like he's an angel. And not because he's an angel because he looks like an angel. He's always hovering and flying. And when you think of pictures of angels and like little cherubs with their wings and they're hovering over everything, that is why I call him Angel. But I know calling him Angel is setting myself up and him up for failure because there's nobody who can live their entire life, as an angel. And plus, every time I call him that, I think, are people going to think that he's dead? Like, I don't want that. I don't want to open that door. So what are we going to call Shaedon?
This is a good question. I think listeners, if you can think about what you would call Shaedon, please let us know. Honestly, like I totally get the angel thing, and maybe just because I know your personality and also your just the way you think, that it makes perfect sense to me. You would call him that, but he looks like he's straight out of a Michelangelo, like flying.
And he's just like, the thing about him that we noticed last year, I think, is that not only like, those dunks were really fun, but like, I do not want to box him into a corner of that he's a dunker. It is clear that he is so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you'd see a still photo of one of those dunks, his legs are straight, his toes are pointed, his arms are parallel. And it's like he's like a gymnast up there while he's hovering. So something to like that encapsulates just like the beauty of watching him.
Yeah. He's he can be a really elegant mover.
Yeah.
And that's not something that like I think like so like when I was younger, I spent like 10 years of my life figure skating. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what it means to be elegant. And I will say this from having watched many, many, many skaters over my life and skated for many years of my life. Elegance is like it's kind of just like an essence of a person. Like you can teach it to a degree, but some people are just born with it. And I feel like Shaedon's just born with it. He's elegant. He like when he extends, when he like that block he had on Luke Kennard that made my heart just skip a beat. Like he is perfectly in line, perfectly laid out to maximize every inch of his body. He looks amazing in that block. And toes are pointed.
Exactly. It's just objectively, it's a 10.
Yeah.
Like he's a 10 in the way that he executes so much of his the things that he does. Also, love the fact that you were a figure skater for 10 years. Need to know more about that at some point. Did you ever compete?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I won medals in the Lloyd Center.
A medal winning Rose Harding. I love it. Oh my gosh. That is I was never decorated like that.
I was Rose Pergament at the time, but Rose Pergament.
Decorated figure skater Rose Pergament.
Yeah. But it was anyways, it's one of those things that I still think about today. And when I still watch people's bodies move, because I did dance and I did skating, because you basically have to be a dancer in order to like build some of that like elegance in your body movement. So I did dance and I did skating for like 10 years ish. And when I watch other people move, I can like, I don't want to say like 100% I can see these things, but I sometimes can really notice when it's people do it with effort and people do it naturally. And I think that sometimes you can teach your body to do things more naturally that you had to teach it to do, but like it's like a spectrum. And like Shaedon just has very elegant movements, and I don't think he's thinking about it. I think that's just the way he moves. Yeah. I was a very like clunky, elegant person, so I had to be really effortful, really thoughtful. I watched lots of tape of myself skating, and when I watch myself, I'm like, yeah, it looks good, but you can tell that I like have to make it that way, that my brain has to tell my body to do all these things. I have to remember to do these things. I have to remember to like like extend all the way out through my fingertips. Like, and some people, they just have it, and Shaedon has it down to his toes.
Well, and this is not an elegant segue. Speaking of elegance, but it does make me think of what I've been seeing on defense. And so I'm not saying that they are playing elegant, perfect defense right now. But what I will say is that I observed in that last game against the one against Memphis, I had this aha moment where I was like, this is what people mean by watching five guys play defense. And this is not to put down a certain star that was with the team for a long time and maybe wasn't a great defender. It was just to remark that when all these guys are coordinating together, like on purpose, but nobody has a bigger assignment than they can really handle because everybody only has one person they have to guard. It just makes it look so much easier. And it looks, I'm not going to say effortless, but it looked like the effort is there, but it doesn't look as hard. Does that make any sense at all?
No, it does. And like that's what makes like some other teams that have been playing certain schemes with the same personnel for years look so polished, is because they know exactly what their role is. They know exactly what everybody else is going to be doing around them without looking at them. And like, I don't think the Blazers are there yet, right?
No.
I still, but I can see that starting to take shape where they're having to think about it less because they're not as concerned about whether anyone's doing their job or whatever, because they all know what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see like, like teams that have been working toward this with roughly the same guys and the same coaching and the same players for like 3, 4, 5 years, and why it looks so good. It's because they don't have to think about that anymore. They just know where to be. They know what their role is. They know exactly what everybody else is going to be doing around them, and so they can just focus on the job that they are there to do. And
yeah,
I figured it would take a while. It would take like longer, honestly, to even see any of that. I thought it was going to look way messier than like early than before it started to look anything good, because it's really hard to just rely on other guys to do exactly the thing that they're supposed to do, and it takes a while to even learn exactly what everybody else is supposed to do because you have to learn what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm like pretty amazed that it even looks like anything so far. The defense could look way worse than it looks now.
For me, out of this season, I was just like, I just want to see improvement. And I'm seeing improvement sooner than I thought. Like I thought like that first game was an eyesore. It was just like, I don't even know what's happening. Like they turned it over on the very first possession. Scoot gets the ball and throws it out of bounds. And it was like, oh God, this is going to be a long season. And that was, obviously an offensive play. But just the way that I think it's still going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be times when they're clicking, and then there's going to be times when there aren't. They're going to have to grow that trust for each other. They're going to have to do more talking. Sometimes you go out there and you're like, who's talking? And then sometimes they have a timeout and they come back and it's like, oh, somebody reminded them that they need to talk. So I feel like I'm not going to say that we have we know who the coach is now, but I feel like we're actually seeing maybe some evidence of what he wants.
Yeah, we're seeing some coaching.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing what it might look like. And one of the things that actually that sticks out to me about what I've seen this season so far, and granted small sample size, is that like last year and probably the year before, I was happy seeing individuals play better defense. But this is the first year where I'm like, oh, I can kind of see the scheme. You know what I mean? So it's not just like Drew Eubanks hustling and getting blocks. Now it's like a whole scheme where you see guys making the right rotations, fighting over the right screens, picking up guys on switches. And it's like, it's not exactly seamless, but I can see the scheme and not just individual players trying really hard, like the way Josh Hart used to do it.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I can, now that you put it that way, I understand that. And also it just seems like the communication it like this is going to come up when we talk about DeAndre, like surprise, this is going to be our DeAndre Ayton episode. But I watched this video that he did with Mike Schmitz, and he was talking about how he plays defense, and so much of it for him was about communication and knowing what he was going on behind him. And so when DeAndre Ayton is playing his best defense, it's because he's got somebody behind him telling him what's going on. And he like really, like when he played with Mikal Bridges, that was something that he really relied on Mikal Bridges, and also Devin Booker. He said Devin Booker is not as well known for this, but he was an excellent communicator, and DeAndre always knew what was going on behind him. And so like that's more of a scheme than, like you were saying, just guys just hustling and yelling at each other.
Yeah, totally. And actually I listened to part of that interview too. And I was actually like struck by like my perception of his teammates and like some of those Suns. It was like I don't know why. I don't know what my perception was, but it was very different than he made it sound like his role on that team was. And it was nice to hear that, like, you know, like some Mikal Bridges was like kind of emerging at that point, and Devin Booker was a star. And like, it was kind of nice to hear that these guys were all like really helping each other get better. Because I think that sometimes we've seen, like, depending on the star, obviously, some stars are just not so interested. And they're like, I'm going to do my thing and you do your thing and you get as good as you can, but I'm going to do mine. And it was nice to hear like Devin Booker really tried to help guys get better around him. And he was like, he wanted to do that. I don't know. It's just kind of nice, because sometimes you hear about stars that are like kind of divas and they don't really care about that. They're like, you just do your thing around me and I'll do my thing and we'll win.
Yeah. And it seemed like they were like trying to join and combine their forces so that they could do that. The other thing that stood out to me in that interview was when they went over the places where he had a lapse and he broke down, his defense broke down and he wasn't successful at doing what he was supposed to do. He would say, oh, I should have trusted him. Oh, I should have trusted him. And it wasn't like he didn't trust the guys that were talking to him. It was him saying, I should have trusted them. And so I imagine with a brand new team like the Blazers have right now, it takes a while, and we're going to see, again, like a roller coaster. We're going to see times when it's working really well, and we're going to see times when it's not. They just started playing together. So I'm trying to like brace myself for, what happens when, people start playing them differently, and, maybe they have lapses, and how do they get over that, and how do they move on to the next thing, if they're upset about how things went.
Yeah, totally. Can I tell you one other like thing I noticed in the first couple of games? I felt like Scoot was so nervous. I felt his anxiety and I mean not in like a bad way. I mean, I think it was maybe anxious, excited, but like I felt his nerves, and I forget who I said this to, but it reminded me a little bit of like when Dame was like leading up to him getting like the scoring record in the franchise. Like, you know what I mean? It just wasn't quite the same vibe. You just felt this other level of anxiety like simmering under the surface. And like Dame, I mean, he's like, oh, I'm just playing my game or whatever. But like, I felt like he was not playing his game. He like knew it was coming. And I felt like that kind of same anxiety with Scoot, as he was like, this is my debut. This is when I show people what I'm made of. This is, and I was like, you don't have to do it all in like the first game or two or whatever. Just like, we'll see it over the course of the season. It's fine. Like, we love you. We're gonna love you. You don't have to earn our love by showing us everything that you can do in the first 5 games. Like, I don't know. I feel like as he gets more games under his belt, he's gonna settle in more and play more of his style without any like pressure to like perform.
Yeah, I think I think that's a good observation. There'll be a time where he suddenly doesn't need to, like, he can stop. I mean, I don't know what's going on in his head, but it does look like right now, like he's trying to do everything and be everything. And he's just like, when you're going against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, or you're going against, I mean, he's going against better players every night, and he's the point guard of the team. So it's going to be a huge mismatch. He's going to be outplayed. It's just like, facts.
Yeah.
And it's, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, I don't think he's a starting level player. That doesn't mean that I don't necessarily think that he should start, but he's just simply not on the level as an NBA starter. If he went down to the G League, he would crush everybody and roll all over everybody, but there's a big difference. And so it's going to take a while. Can I add on to that though? I want to cry every night when I think about the fact that the Blazers now have 2 backup point guards. I love that so much. That's all I've wanted for a decade, is for the Blazers to just have it's okay to have a backup point guard. They acted like having a backup point guard was like somehow like gonna like ruin their identity. And it's like, practically what the last time they had one was like Tim Frazier, and that was like for 1 year. I mean, it's just like, it's okay to have a backup point guard. Now our point guard is out, and guess what? We have a backup, and then he has a backup. It's like the most beautiful thing I've seen in so long.
Yeah. Shabazz Napier. I was like Shabazz Napier and Tim Frazier, and I feel like we maybe had one other one in there that I can't really think of, but like they never really got real backup minutes because they were busy like playing like their starter for 40 or 38 minutes a game. Like,
yeah. And then moving CJ over or Ant over. And like, that was how it is. But it's like, it's okay to just have a guy who's the backup point guard. And by the way, how much do we love Malcolm Brogdon?
Yeah. He's so good.
He's so great. Every game that we get with Malcolm Brogdon is a gift.
Yes, he's great. He's like, I don't know, he like feels like he has like this calmness about him that is very nice when I've seen him like interviewed. Like he's I know he feels more like an adult. Like I feel like we have a lot of like kids on this team right now, and like he just has like big adult like consistency energy about him. And I'm like, oh, thank God someone's got that. I was just thinking about like, remember when Mo Williams was backing up Dame like early in his career? Like he was a legitimate backup point guard who could run the floor. And I was thinking like about like what other backup point guard have we had that like had like the ability to like run the floor like that? And like not many. Because that wasn't true for Tim Frazier, and it was a little bit true for Shabazz, but like not that true. And like now we have 3 guys that can run the floor if they want.
They were like break glass in case of emergency point guards. Like, okay, we're gonna have to rely on you for a while, like while somebody gets better or something like that. But I just think it's lovely to see that. I really thought at the beginning, I wanted to see, I'm crushed that Ant is out. Super crushed about that.
Yeah.
I can't wait for him to come back, because I was really excited to watch him this year. And I really liked him and Scoot playing alongside of each other, because I think Scoot could actively learn, but also have Ant on the floor who could take it down. He could take on some of that responsibility. So it didn't have to be Scoot every time. Scoot could maybe spend some possessions working more on defense or whatever. But like, I thought they were a really nice pairing. And then in addition to that, I love the pairing of Brogdon and Shaedon, because at that point, couple games in, I was like, Shaedon has made a lot of progress, still not sure if he's like an NBA starter. So having him be able to play alongside Malcolm Brogdon, who could set him up really well and, let him see some success, I thought that was great. But like, I don't think Shaedon needs that. Shaedon has made so many leaps that like Shaedon can be the guy on the floor with experience. It's blown me away how much confidence and just like experience it looks like he has now.
Yeah, he looks, at least on offense, I feel like he looks comfortable. He like makes, I think he makes more like, he's like more decisive in what he wants to do. Like sometimes like last season, I don't know if you really like paid attention. Like, so I like to sometimes just like watch a guy for a few possessions off the ball and see what they do. Like he knew exactly where he wanted to go this season. Last year, I felt him hesitate on deciding where he wanted to go and when, and like timing. And like, sometimes you make that cut and it's not exactly the right time, and that's okay. You just cut again, cut next time. Like this year, he's just really fully committed, I think, to whatever he's going to do next. And I really like that, because I feel like that level of confidence is something that not every guy gets. It just comes with experience. It comes with possessions. It comes with like getting comfortable and like the style of play that you're doing. Like I was thinking about like when Portland had Myers Leonard. Like, poor Myers looked like a prisoner of his own thoughts when it was time to make a hard decision. And sometimes you got to turn that part of your brain off and just go. And I think Shaedon has come to the point where he's able to do that on offense, turn his brain off and just go and know where to be.
I think that's a really good observation. I remember Brooke and Casey talking on their podcast about getting to know Shaedon, and one thing that they learned about him really quickly is he needed to have context. Like he asked a lot of questions, like what's going on, and all he needed was somebody to say, oh, this is what's happening. He'd be like, okay, I can deal with that now. But he needed a lot of just like, here's the situation, this is what's happening, and then he'd be like able to say, okay, go. And I feel like last year playing in the NBA was like that. He was getting the context. And now I feel like he's like, okay, I get it now. And, he's off and running. What do you think about him defensively? I just, again, as somebody who hasn't actually watched defense for a decade, I have a hard time seeing what defense is supposed to look like. But one thing that I watch him a lot, like I'll just like track him for many, many plays. He's got his arms up.
Yes.
And he's talking a little bit more here and there. And now seeing like how much guys like DeAndre like are really relying on that. I think that's a good development. I don't think even the best defenders are going to do everything right, but I feel like he's making strides. What have you noticed about him on defense?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is like a lot of the times and I don't mean this is like a criticism, but a lot of the times he's like not quite in the right position. He's not quite positioned right. And it's like he knows approximately where he should be, but he's like not quite in the right spot. So like perfect example that everybody will have seen, like when Luke Kennard gets that pass to the corner with an open three, Shane's not really in a great position there, but he's so athletic, it kind of didn't matter. And I do think that there's a certain amount of forgiveness that you get with a player who's that athletic and that long, that like it covers up a lot of sins on defense. I would love to see him play like with his body more, I guess. Like he does a lot of like reaching. He plays really long and he plays really wide and he plays tall with his arms, but like I don't see him close distance as much as some of the other guys. Like if you watch like really good defenders like that have been in the NBA for a long time and have had look like good long careers be known as like a good defender, they use their body a lot on guys. They put their body on guys a lot because they're strong and they can kind of control space that way. I think controls with speed and length and not so much with like his strength yet. But he's better than he was last year. Like he's not, I don't think he looks as comfortable on defense as he looks on offense, but he's definitely like, there's a marked difference to me than he was last season. And I think that's true like across the board with everybody. I think that they have like a scheme that they're going toward now and they're working toward it and they're getting a little bit better at it, but it's still early.
Yeah, I think we're going to see him playing with the first unit more than I thought we were going to. So that'll be interesting to see how he does with the first unit. But what do you think about that second unit, the Jabari Toumani combo?
Oh my God. What a fun unit.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to say this, that 2 nights ago when I was watching, I forget which game I was watching, but Darrell Wright and someone else and Kevin Durant were doing like commentary over one of the other games. And Darrell, Blazers legend Darrell Wright, asked KD, like, who are some young guys that you like to watch? Are there other young guys that you like to watch? Like, and Kevin Durant, one of the nice things about him, he's super generous in that way. He will name drop tons of guys. He name dropped tons of guys. I think that he's really genuine in who he is. And it's not this polished persona of a star, but he's like a little bit more cerebral sort of. But all that aside, he went through and he talked about different young guys that he really likes watching. He's like, oh, I like these guys. I like these guys. Oh, I like the twins, the
Amar and Hassan.
No,
the Thompson twins.
Yes. I don't think that's their name though.
Oh, but they're the Thompson.
Yeah, the Thompson twins. And then he also said, and Jabari Walker in Portland. And I was like, our Jabari? And he was just like, he was really generous about naming these guys that he thought were going to be really good, that they're fun to watch, interesting to watch. And I was like, isn't that so nice that like just Jabari was like, not like, he wasn't even our top pick last year. And he, by the way, like the way he's playing right now with his hustle, I'm like, this, you can pry those minutes from his cold dead hands.
Yeah.
Like when like everyone's healthy and whatever, because like he wants those minutes. You can see him playing really hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks really good. And I don't know, like, our friend of the pod, Jason, was like, I don't know how they send some like Shaedon back to the bench when Ant's healthy. And I was thinking, like, I don't know how you take Jabari's minutes from him. And all of a sudden, I'm like, isn't it so great to have a problem that you have too many guys worthy of playing minutes than like looking around going,
In
well,
a
I guess,
developmental year.
yeah. Instead of like looking around and going like, well, let's get that two guy in here because we're getting blown out or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's what a great problem to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm super excited to see what they look like after having some success against some of the less good teams. I now want to see them play good teams again. I was shocked on Friday that they were able to beat the Grizzlies because the Grizzlies need a win so bad. And
They look starving for a win.
Yeah, and we're recording this on Sunday before they play the Grizzlies again. So I would not be surprised if the Grizzlies just need a win so bad. I feel so bad for them, honestly.
Did you
They
see?
just it's tough.
I think it was in the Blazer game. I think there was like a clip of like Marcus Smart like sitting on the floor devastated after that
Yes.
game because like they I feel like they're identityless right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have this thing like Ja's not playing with them, but he's gonna come back. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be playing a style that will fit Ja when he returns. And then they lost like Dylan Brooks, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, Dylan Brooks, poo poo." I'm like, he was a huge part of like their team identity.
And Steven
And
Adams, that's a huge loss.
yeah, like they don't actually have any like identity setting players. Good continuity from like the old team to this, like for some of these new guys to like normally you get a guy like Marcus Smart and you're like, okay, well, he was really successful in Boston. We got him because he's good. And then you get him in there and you're supposed to slot him into like your typical starters to see how he fits in your system. Well, no Steven Adams, no Ja Morant,
Mm-hmm.
like Dylan Brooks is gone. Like all these guys that they had like established their identity with are just gone. And he's like, well, I fit into what now? Into the void?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does he figure out what his like right size role is on that team when it's like he's working on like a temporary looking lineup?
Yeah, it's rough. And I have to say that I was expecting a split. So maybe they will split. Maybe the Blazers will win again. That would be amazing. But if they were going to win one of the games, winning that Friday in-season tournament game made me so happy. I am just, unsurprisingly, I love the idea of the in-season tournament, and I literally can't wrap my head around why anybody would complain about an in-season tournament. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody talking about how dumb it is, and I'm like, why does anybody care? And I would genuinely like to understand where people are coming from, because I feel like I'm missing something. Like they feel like it's detrimental in some way, or do people just think it's like unnecessary and extra? I think it's super fun. The game on Friday was a playoff atmosphere. It was electric. And do you know how long it's been since the Blazers had a home win?
You told me this and I can't even.
The last Blazers home win was in February, and it was Damian's 71-point game. And it has been that long since the Moda Center was rocking out. We were having so much fun. And it was just like, this is why this in-season tournament is fun. The Blazers, I'm going to, I don't want anybody to be down on me for saying this, but I don't think the Blazers are winning the championship this year. But to have something, just that little tiny bit of extra juice for the fans, I think really propelled the team. I was thinking about Scoot. Scoot wasn't playing, but like, what must he be thinking? Like listening to the crowd and going like, oh my gosh, I'm in a whole different level, because he didn't play in the NCAA tournament. He has, I guess he played in the games against Wemby, which were probably really well attended, but like nobody really probably had a side that they were choosing. But to be in the arena for something like this, I think that must have been so exciting and gonna, make those guys feel a little bit of extra spring in their step. And that's like all we want. We want these guys to feel good. We know it's a developmental year, but we don't want them to like be beat down, and getting these little wins, especially a little win that has like a little bit of extra juice to it. I think it's nothing but good.
So I'll say the only criticism that I have of the in-season tournament is not that I don't like the idea of the in-season tournament. I don't love the way that they spread out group play exactly. Like, I think that they like tried to emulate soccer too much because it like, I think it's hard to remember. It's going to be hard for people to remember to track these things that way, except for I guess they're trying to remind us with the court. And two, I'm like, do we win anything good? I think that they could work on what like what players and teams stand to gain by what the like prize is. That's not just like a trophy.
They're winning money.
Yeah.
They get extra money. And for these teams that don't have a bunch of superstars, who have guys on smaller contracts, it's like it's a substantial amount of money. The coaches now, we're learning, are winning money. And as far as the scheduling is, just remember this: Fridays and Tuesdays are for winning, because all these games occur on Fridays and Tuesdays. So,
and are the courts always going to look like that on Fridays and Tuesdays then?
I'm not sure. And
I don't special court.
And I don't necessarily know that every Friday and every Tuesday game are going to count. But to me, it's just in Portland, Fridays and Tuesdays are for winning. All the other games can be for development. But let's try to win up front just for 1 month. Just for 1 month in November. Fridays and Tuesdays in November are for winning.
Okay, so I have one. Okay, so this is one thing that is a difference that you and I had, because you were in the arena for that game and I was at home on TV. The red court sucks for seeing the ball.
Okay.
I cannot see the red court on TV obscures the ball movement, and I have a really hard time. And like, I have a great TV. Mm-hmm. I have like I have a beautiful OLED TV, and the ball just does not pop on that all red.
I can see how that would be really rough. Remember when the Blazers had the roadkill uniforms and then they would stand in the red key and you couldn't see them?
Yes.
That's totally a valid point. I absolutely hear you on that one. And it
wasn't
an issue in the arena.
Yeah, I want to see the ball. And also, I don't like it when these teams are wearing jerseys that match the like really bold colors on the court. I think you need to wear contrasting colors. Mm-hmm. You need to wear like white, and then like the team that has the most different color has to wear like blue contrasting on red or whatever, or yellow contrasting on red, something that like pops more, because it's really hard. It's harder for me to see some of the like off ball movements, and it's harder for me to see the ball on those like bright courts, depending on what guys are wearing and if the color is too close to orange.
Yeah, no, I can, those criticisms make a lot of sense. And those are all things that I think are fixable. Like, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. Oh yeah, we didn't think about that. That hopefully that they will see and they will fix.
Yeah.
But I love it. Tuesdays and Fridays are for winning.
I love that they put the trophy on everybody's court.
I know. I just think it's just so silly. It's just, I don't know. I think it's fun, and I'm excited to be there for more of those games.
Are you going to Vegas if we go to the in-season tournament?
Absolutely. It's going to be so expensive because it'll be like a last minute thing, but oh yeah. Absolutely. I would not miss if the Blazers were going to be in it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would just be so you're talking to the person who wears a summer league championship necklace. The ring on my necklace. Right. So nobody loves these quote unquote meaningless things more than me. Again, bar is low, my happy place.
I'm here for it. It's good. Also, I think that like maybe there's something like, for me, I got to be in a more comfortable space with no expectations once I became a parent. Because like, like raising a child is like the long game. And if you think about your team that way, you have a lot of patience, like incremental improvement every day. And sometimes you backslide, and sometimes your kid won't sleep, and sometimes your team can't figure out their defensive scheme for a while. It's okay. Like, it's the long game.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I completely relate to that. Should we talk about DeAndre? Should we turn to the man of the week?
Yes, I would love to talk about DeAndre, because we both, so this year we're both reading about everybody instead of one of us reading about each guy. And so I'm so interested to talk to you about this, because we read separately about DeAndre Ayton, and now it's time for us to compare notes.
Yeah. And we didn't really talk beforehand about how we're going to do this, so it might take us a little while to get in a groove about how to do it this way. And the other thing that I did differently this year than I've done in years past is, like, in years past, I dove so deep and did so much research that like I would get overwhelmed and just like not even know like where to go, like because I'd be like, I need to find the answer to this question. And sometimes in this case, sometimes I was like, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just gonna leave it and move on.
Yeah.
Not
I get it.
not promising it's gonna be any shorter than it ever was in the past.
That's right.
We're gonna try. We'll see how we go. So how do you want to start? Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Why don't you start? Tell me what you learned about him.
Okay, I'll just, and then you just interrupt and
Sure.
we'll just go. So he was born on July 23rd in 1998. He's 25 years old, which is always like, I forget how old or how not old DeAndre Ayton is. So he's 25 years old. He's from Nassau, the Bahamas. Have you ever been to the Bahamas?
No,
Or
I
anywhere in
haven't.
the Caribbean? I haven't
No.
either. I actually like went to the map because I was like, okay, I need to know more about this. So the city of Nassau is on an island called New Providence, and then there's other islands that are also part of the Bahamas. It's in the Caribbean, and it's like southeast of Florida by like 184 miles from Miami is where it is. So it's not like super far away. It's a couple hundred miles from there. So his early life, he spent in Nassau. His parents are Andrea and Alvin Ayton. His family was Seventh-day Adventist. Church was a big part of their life. And in several of the articles that we read, he talks about different activities that he did as a kid. He was he played music with the church, which I thought, oh, he's a musician. How fun is that? He was always a clown. His mom thought he was going to be famous for being a comedian because he was just always making jokes and making everybody laugh. He loved making everybody laugh. He has some older siblings. I think he has 2 older brothers, and then he has 3 younger siblings now, I think. And he was Alvin Ayton is his stepfather, but he does have his name. And I think at least his younger siblings are the sons of Alvin. His older siblings may have, and he himself definitely had a different father. So, but I didn't go too far deep into there. Anything else about his early childhood that you thought was interesting to talk about?
Well, so one of the things that stuck out to me is so I think I did see that his birth father is Nigerian descent. They don't seem to have a relationship now, and Alvin is like his dad. I think he calls Alvin his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that stuck out to me is that I read in an article where that Alvin used to take the kids to like assist him because Alvin's a plumber. And he used to take his kids to assist him on jobs. And at the end of the week, if you did stuff, he'd give you like $20 for the week. And I remember reading in an article that like when DeAndre Ayton was trying to figure out if he wanted to play basketball or not, because he's really interested in basketball, he had a choice. At the end of the week, he was sitting on $100 from helping Alvin work that week. And he had a choice of whether he was going to spend that $100 on a basketball camp tuition or whether he was going to buy like $100 worth of candy instead. He was like, I could have bought like $100 worth of sour Skittles and gummy worms, but in the end, I chose to enter this basketball camp, which was like a really important part of his like journey towards basketball. And to me, that was one, it was great. I just like that. That's like that's the circumstance that led to his like the entire rest of his life career path. But also it was a reminder of like how much of a kid he was,
Mm-hmm.
where he's like basketball camp or candy could go either way.
Yeah,
And like that's the age he was when he was making decisions about like what his interests were, and that led him on like basically his career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's go on and talk about that. So he was 12 years old when he spent that $100 to go to this camp, and it was run by somebody that I can't remember what his name was, but anyway, so he goes to this basketball camp where he's first noticed at 12 years old. He was very, very tall. as a kid. He was over 6 feet tall at this point. He like well over 6 feet tall at this point. And one of the things that came through in all the different things that we read or listened to him talk about is how much bigger he was from other kids at his age, how people always thought that he was older than he appeared to be, how his mom was very worried about him because, you know, grown men who were a foot shorter than him thought that he was an adult and tried to get him to do adult things, and how she was very concerned about that. So at 12 years old, when he was noticed at this basketball camp, they the people who ran it and had connections to people back in the States were able to find a scholarship for him at 12 years old. I'm just stuck on 12 years old. He moved to San Diego to become a basketball player, to have live this dream that somebody had for him to become a basketball player. I'm sure he was probably on board because, you know, you're that young and you get attention. But in a lot of the stuff that I read about him, like people made fun of him a lot because he was young and didn't understand the rules. He just started playing this game. The kids would make fun of him. The coaches would yell at him because he didn't understand what was happening. And I just, like, honestly, reading about like his early days kind of broke my heart in a lot of ways, because like this is a really young person who is separated from his family by a long wide margin in a totally different town, and he just has to navigate away and like figure out how to live in those circumstances. And like the school that he went to is the Balboa City School, which, sidebar, always makes me think of Arrested Development every time I hear of Balboa. But so he goes there, but at the time they didn't even have a basketball team. They were planning on implementing a program. So,
and they wanted him to seed it.
Yeah, at 12, or, you know, by then maybe he was 13, but he was very, very young. I mean, we just pause for a second and think about a 12-year-old that, you know, and it's just, to me, it just breaks my heart to think that this was a situation. And I don't know, I wasn't there. I didn't make any of these decisions, but it really shed some light to me on the different experience that he had from the kids that I know, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know, like the thing that stuck out to me is like, so, you know, he was far away. They didn't have a basketball program. They wanted to seed it with him. And I'm like, how apparent was that to his family? I don't know, you know, because like they wanted to seed a basketball program with him. His family like wasn't going to be there with him, and they just had to trust these people to like take care of their baby in a foreign country. And they didn't particularly provide good access for them. Like I remember reading that his mother was like, you know, she didn't really get updates and she wasn't really invited to come see him play. And that was really concerning to her. And that like, it was also kind of clear that like the people who were seeding this basketball program were like, had some tension, because it turns out that basketball program didn't really get off the ground, because he ended up leaving. He went to a different program, but like those, like the coach, and I think that the person who was trying to like implement the basketball program, they like broke up. Yeah, so they were like working together and they couldn't work together. And so they broke up, and then it was like very awkward. Like, what do you do with this kid? Because this kid is here, like, whether you like, you took responsibility to take care of this kid, and now you don't really have a basketball program for him. And I was like, how frustrating must that be as a mother to like just not know any of the stuff that's going on there. You don't get to see it firsthand because you're not there to observe any of it. You just are trusting that they're going to take care of your baby.
He was a guest on the W.H.A.T during the bubble, and he talked a pretty good length about what it was like for him. And he talks about how he didn't have a childhood, and he was like, up until age 12 I had a childhood, and then he suddenly had to grow up. He said that's, you know, when he was over there, they would wake him up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he would drill, and he didn't understand the culture. And if he didn't do things right, everybody was mad at him. So he just spent all this time trying to do everything the right way. You know, as a result, he had some amazing fundamentals, but like, just like from the way he tells it, a lot of it was like through fear, because he just didn't want anybody to get mad at him or make fun of him or yell at him. So he like had to learn all this stuff at 12 years old. And, he didn't have a cell phone. When he got a little bit older, he'd go to things like all the kids. And when he met like the other kids, that's when he started to like learn a little bit more about like culture and like what the basketball culture was like. And they'd be like, why don't you have a cell phone? And, and he started to realize that like his experience was different from others. And it was when I think he was a junior that his mom moved to the US and got him out of moved him from the San Diego area. And that's when they moved to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I don't remember where I read this. There was a bunch of articles that were about him like right around draft time, and it was in one of those articles that I read it. But his mom was saying that like, because she was so uncomfortable with the amount of access that she had to him, that she was like very nervous about his well-being. And like I remember her saying something like, she started calling the family he was living with as like his American dad. And she was like realizing that like that he was like very disconnected from their family. And that made her really nervous, especially because she wasn't even able to like hear from her son what was going on with him. She was hearing like getting really short calls with him, really little access, not invited to come see him play. And she realized that like he didn't have that like family stability that she thought he needed. And so she like up and moved, they moved him to Hillcrest Academy in Phoenix, and she stayed with him this time and like really made sure he had that connection to his family, even though it sounded like it was like probably like financially tough for them to make that work. But she was like, he needs us. And like also good for her for being a mom and like knowing like that her son needs his mom.
Mm-hmm. Even at a distance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember reading and I read an article about a fundraiser that he did when he was a Phoenix Sun, but he was talking about how like his mom was always like cooking for like not just him, like when it was time for him to be called in for dinner, she called in the whole neighborhood, she called in all of his friends. Like she really was a collector, and she gave a lot of love and like a nurturing to all of the kids like they were her own. So imagine how hard it must be to be separated from your child,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the way you've approached like the way you care for other people your whole life, like that he's not there. So she was like, okay, going to Phoenix, we're going to be there together, and you will have a connection to us. And I know that, we'll get into like him going to college and stuff and how he was perhaps like implicated in some of those like wiretapping tapes around NCAA rule breaking for recruiting. But it makes sense to me that he went to Arizona.
Yeah.
If it's like the only place where they'd ever been together was Arizona, was in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
It like makes perfect sense to me that that's where he would go. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was one of those things where I like tried to read into it and I was like, it's been covered. I'm not going to like figure out too many details about what happened with that.
Yeah. I'll just say if I were DeAndre Ayton's family and I was coming to the United States for the first time, I'm like divesting from the San Diego area. We found our footing in the Phoenix area, and my son's a basketball player. Of course I want him to go to U of A.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the only state we know. It's the only area we know. And then they could also like, they're right there. They could see him play. And like she talked about how like important it was for her. She drove to Tucson every time to see him play. They'd get in the car and drive to Tucson and make sure that they saw him playing, which is like such a different experience from her having to like fly from the Bahamas, or like her not even getting invited to see him play. Like she had as much access to her son as she could possibly want. And I think that it makes perfect sense to me that that's where he would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. While he was at Hillcrest, I read this great article about the month that he and Marvin Bagley were there together.
Oh yes.
I'm not sure if you read that one. But people will recall they went number 1 and 2 in the draft, and of what, 2017 or 18. Shoot, I should have that off the top of my head. Anyway, there was one month Marvin Bagley's dad was a coach, and the school was having a hard time getting the prep academy that was affiliated with the school was having a hard time getting the academic credentials correct so that they could be NCAA eligible. And so Marvin Bagley chose to leave and go to a different school where that was all already situated and he didn't have to worry about that. but this is a fun article because it was sort of a little bit of like an oral history, and of the legendary late night that Ayton and Marvin would be in the gym battling against each other, and how much fun they had, like elevating each other and going against each other. And I didn't really realize that they had such a close relationship. I don't know if it's a friendship. I don't know how they are, but it made me think, oh, I wonder what it would be like to see the two of them play together again someday.
I thought it was very interesting too, because Marvin Bagley kind of was like highly touted coming to the pros. I mean, he's still around. I think he's in Detroit. He's the backup big in Detroit.
Yeah, and I wish that I'd known this so that I could have watched them interact with each other.
Yeah, I was gonna say they just played. So yeah, I it's interesting. I didn't see a lot of like I felt like when I was reading about DeAndre Ayton, there was a lot of like outsiderism where he just didn't quite feel like part of like the basketball culture, part of the American culture, I don't know. I didn't feel like that he had really like was fully embraced until like maybe he became a top prospect. That he had really been fighting his way into like being seen as for who he was as a basketball player, instead of people just trying to turn him into something that he maybe wasn't ready for at the time. Because like you said, he was big, and I remember his mom talking about how they put him in like games and teams with older kids his whole life because of the way he looked, but like mentally, emotionally, he wasn't quite ready for that. And that's like kind of been the story where he's just kind of an ill fit into like the culture in a lot of different ways, like for like most of his youth. It's like he moved around from different school to different school trying to find out where he fit, where people would like see him for the player that he was and the player that he wanted to be, and maybe that didn't happen for him until he got to the pros. And then like I think about how he got to go to Phoenix, which is amazing because that's where his family was. So he still got to be with his family there. And I was like, oh, is it going to be really hard for him to move to Portland? That was like my first thought was like his roots are in Phoenix. His mother's in Phoenix. His family's in Phoenix. That's the place that like embraced them the most. So like, how hard will it be for him to be here?
Well, I hope that he's happy here.
I hope so too.
Did you read any of now I'm like super invested in him. Like that's what happens when we do these things, is I get really invested in characters. And we talked about this a little bit beforehand. And some of this was kind of reminiscent of Yusuf Nurkic's story in terms of him like being removed from his family at a young age and being sent to discover basketball. Did I say it yet on the podcast about when Woj asked him, did you find basketball or basketball find you?
You haven't said that yet. You said that to me privately.
Yeah. So in that podcast, he said, oh, basketball definitely found me. And that really just made me think about like the different trajectories and the different paths that guys go through to get here, and to kind of compound what you were saying about him not quite fitting in. He told in a couple of different places, I heard stories where he talked about being TFN, which means tall for nothing, which is like what the kids would call him if he would make a mistake or do something bad or not understand the rules, and how that like really affected him as being called tall for nothing, when like he's made his whole life about playing basketball because everybody said you're tall, you should go play basketball. And then when he messes up, he hears TFN. And I know, isn't that sad?
I don't like that whatsoever.
And so but one of the things that did is it made him really want to prove to people that he wasn't TFN, and he got especially mad when that would like that came from guards, because he really wanted to do what guards did. And this was from that Mike Schmidt's interview, which is so good that we should definitely link in and people should definitely go check it out. Because he talked about, he always wanted to do what guards were doing. He didn't want to do the thing that they always wanted him to do because he was really tall. Like he wanted to run around and do guard stuff. And so he really loves guarding guards. So a 7-foot tall guy who loves guarding guards, I think is super interesting. And when I was watching that film, watching him watch his own film, and now just when I watch him play, I realize like how fast he is, and his footwork is so nice. And you can really see that he wants to have that stability and quickness that it takes to guard those guys who are much smaller. And I just think about those stories about him being challenged in that way. He was like, they're not going to be calling me tall for nothing. I'm going to show them that as a big guy can guard a small guy. I just thought that was interesting.
Man, that bums me out. Tall for nothing. Like what a put down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that one bit.
And again, like just being this guy who's told you're supposed to be a basketball player because you're tall, and then these little kids, these young guys who say stuff because they're young guys, and that's just how kids are, throwing out these insults to him. I don't know. It's just very complicated, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him personally, but from reading the stuff and listening to him talk on the Woj podcast, I really walked away feeling like he, it's not even that he has a chip on his shoulder so much as just like these constant things like affected who he is and how he sees himself in the game. And so that's why I'm like, he needs our support, just like we were the same way with Yusuf Nurkic. Like, this is a guy who I think thrives on outside validation. So you're going to see me tweet like a million times a night when DeAndre Ayton does something good. I'm going to tweet that support because I want him to know, like, I see you doing this thing right. I see you doing this thing. I see you hustling. I see you making the right choices, when so much of what fan culture does is point out all the things people do wrong. I'm going to try really hard to like find the things that he does right.
I love that so much. And I was going to say, like, we know exactly what a guy like that can use from like the fandom, like, cause we got like a different flavor of that with, I think, Nurk. But one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about after reading about DeAndre Ayton a little bit is how, like, a lot of people were so interested in what he could do with basketball, or what he could or couldn't do with basketball, that they didn't really care for like the rest of him as a person. And that, like, when I see people trying to like thrust nicknames on him like that, it's like, I don't even understand why you would do that. If even if you have these people that are just so invested in him, the basketball aspect of him, like, why would you try to like ruin somebody's self-confidence in that space if that's the only part of like that you think that is the most important thing that he brings to whatever your interest is here? And obviously, like, you and I know, like, we spend a lot of time thinking about who these guys are beyond who they are as basketball players, because that's part of who they are. Like, it's a big part of who they are. Like, basketball is a part of who they are, but like, we need to care about the other aspects of them to know how to cheer for them and support them. And if you're just the guy who thinks the only reason why you're there to cheer for him is because of basketball, why are you trying to ruin his confidence and the way he feels about himself as a basketball player? That makes zero sense to me that people would do that. And I don't understand, like, mental health stuff, personality, like, outside of basketball life aside, like, that just seems really, really short-sighted and silly to me that that's what people did.
I'm hoping that it's like that type of thing is going to go into the past,
Yes.
as people understand that people, the best way to get the most out of someone is to treat them as a whole person and support their whole personness.
Yeah. I read a really sweet article about him and his mother doing a fundraiser at like a very fancy restaurant in Phoenix that was supposed to support an organization that I can't remember the name of now, that was like single moms. It was an organization for single moms. And what happened was his mother brought a family recipe to this restaurant and taught the chefs how to make it, and then they offered it on their menu, and then the proceeds from that particular dish like went to this organization. And in this article, it talked about how the chef really cared what DeAndre thought of the meal that he cooked that was supposed to be his mother's recipe. And it wasn't until DeAndre like tasted it and smiled and was like, the rice tastes like my mom's rice, that he like felt like he had something. But like, to me, it like really like spoke to his whole personness right there, that like, you think about like food as like, I mean, food is nourishment, but it's also like culture, it's also family, it's also a huge part of who we are, the things that are find comforting to us. And I like loved that at that point in his career, once he was in Phoenix, like he was able to like bring those two things together and bring his mom, like he like brought visibility to his mom, and like his visibility and his mom's visibility together were doing something that was benefiting community. And I was like, I'm so glad to hear that he got that eventually.
Mhm.
Like, we all need our moms sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that does make me wonder about. I wonder if his mom is going to move up here, or if he's just going to keep going back and forth. Um,
Yeah.
but
Andrea
yeah.
Ayton, if you want to come on down. We'd be very excited to have you.
Yes, and learn more about your boy. I really want to hear. I could just picture him as a youngster, like just trying to make everybody laugh all the time. And he played the drums, and she told the story about how he would play him so hard that he kept breaking them because he was so big, and he'd play him so hard. He was also in a band. He played the trumpet. It said tuba, but on the W.H.A.T he corrected it and said it was actually the trumpet.
Mm.
And I know like now as like hobbies or video games, like as they are for so many people, I'd love to know more about what he likes to do. And I sort of, he's sort of like, is on his own path that maybe is different from a lot of other NBA. I mean, he chose to be he's one of the first Puma endorsed players after, they decided to get back into basketball. And like,
Hmm.
when everybody else is, what are you, Adidas or Nike, he chose Puma. And I just thought that was interesting that as well
Isn't
as
Scoot Puma
Scoot.
too?
Yeah, Scoot is also Puma. So we have, there's two. And seems like that's kind of like you choose Puma when you want to kind of make your own mark, or, do something kind of special.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so we mentioned very briefly about the NCAA investigations and him being
Yes.
named, and him and his family being named. I mean,
Well,
that's
also,
something people can look up.
yeah, I'll just say this though. Like he was never actually implicated in that.
Okay.
Like there was never like beyond like somebody mentioning him in a wiretap tape, there was never any other
Mhm.
evidence found that he was involved in any of it, and his family has always denied it. And so far, I think it's like safe to assume at this point that like most of the dust on that is settled, and his family is completely unaffiliated with all of the wrongdoing that was found there.
Mhm. I'll just mention in college, he did get a lot of accolades. He was the Pac-12 Player of the Year his freshman year, and he was the most outstanding player of the Pac-12 tournament. And he was the first player in conference history to win Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, and tournament most outstanding player in the same season. So, a strong year that he had. And then, the draft, he was drafted in 2018. He had a beautiful suit that had the Bahamian flag inside it. That's like super pretty, which people should look at.
It's a
Um,
great, it's a great looking suit.
yeah, I feel like there's just a couple of things to touch on about him in the NBA that we should bring up. The first is the suspension his sophomore season.
Yeah.
Um, he tested positive for a diuretic, which
Yeah.
I spent way more time investigating this than I needed to. But there's diuretics and there's performance enhancing drugs that are not permitted, and he tested for one of the diuretics. He talks in the Woj pod about being super afraid to tell his coach. He found out about it, and he immediately called Robert Sarver, and then he called James Jones, and then he like put off telling Monty Williams as long as he possibly could. And he said he like, they were on the road. He got the call and he's on the road, and he like paced up and down out in front of the coach's hotel room for like 10 minutes before he was brave enough to tell him. And
Hmm.
so he told the coach, and he said the coach was like super supportive. He was going to they originally were going to appeal it. They ended up not appealing it, and it never was like super clear to me. Did you find out, did you ever figure that out, why he decided not to appeal it?
No, I didn't. But I will say that like the I don't super duper understand some of these rules. I gotta be honest, in the NBA, and like the appeal process is like convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it was one of those things where it just didn't feel like kind of worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as what I understand is like with diuretics, they can mask performance enhancing drugs, and that's why they're the
Yes.
issue. And like the thing about it is like they won't name the diuretic, but if you do test positive for a performance enhancing drug, they will they
Name it.
will name that, but they won't name the thing that you tested for. So, and from what I also understood about the appeal is it would be like super hard, because it's like when you appeal something like that, has to be like, no doubt, oh yeah, we were wrong about this. They couldn't just like be like, oh, maybe we were wrong. It was like they were going to have to like remember everything that he ate, all the supplements that he took, and name absolutely everything. And the way it was said publicly is because it was the most important thing, or it was most important for him to be around the team. And
Yes.
so it doesn't quite meet match,
And
but
so for listeners, I'll say a diuretic is something that makes you have to pee. That's why it can be masking, right? It can help you like pass through things that would be normally stay in your body quicker. Now, I'll say this, like lots of people end up having to use diuretics for very normal reasons, very, whatever. Like, and I will say that like talking about your use of a diuretic could be really kind of embarrassing. I'll just go ahead and say it. If you need it for like a legitimate reason. And maybe like, some guys might not want to go through that, to have to like outline exactly everything that they use for every purpose and have that be part of like, I don't know how like public they would make that appeal. Like, but like some guys don't want to talk about that.
mm-hmm.
And I know that like there's, we talk about, oh, they're supposed to like, submit all this information to like ensure that they are competing in a fair way. But like at the end of the day, like these are all still people that sometimes they don't want to talk about like their bowel movements, They're all kind of kids too. Like he was a kid when this happened.
Yeah, he was 21 years old when this happened. Yeah, so good points. So 25 games he was suspended, and this is the COVID season. So he missed the first 25 games, and he was able to be around the team, but when the game started, he had to leave the arena. And he said that was really hard. He talked about that on the W.H.A.T pod. He also said during that time, he got more into film than he had ever been. So he used that time to do that. So that happened. Then the bubble happened, and just it was a reminder to me about how good Phoenix was in the bubble and how they shocked everybody, and they were undefeated in the bubble, and they were clicking on all cylinders, and they were playing so well. And it was only because of the seeding before they went in, and I think how well the Blazers did, that Phoenix, even though they were undefeated, did not make it into the play-in tournament.
Yeah, that was gosh, that feels like such a weird lost season to me. Like I forget about everything that happened in the bubble somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was when I think Phoenix became like people started looking, and they were like, oh, this is a real team. Because, before they had not really been that, but like, between I think like them coming together with Monty Williams, and also like they found their center, like Book made a big leap, like all of this stuff happened for them, that all of a sudden people were like, oh, this is legitimate. Like, this is a legitimate contender now. I think it like changed the whole perception of the team that year, because after that is like when, like if Chris Paul is coming to like hang out on your team for a while, who's like looking to like go on a competitive team and try to win a ring, like all of a sudden you're like a real team.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant's like demanding to come to your team, like you're a real team. Bradley Beal's forcing his way to your team, you're a real team. Like all of a sudden all these things started happening for them, where the perception of them changed around the NBA, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all in all, after reading this and really learning more about his story, but also seeing like his development in Phoenix and what he'd been through in Phoenix, I think he's a really great addition to the Blazers. And it's also, I've said this before, it's like, it's no risk, because if it doesn't work out, it's like the Blazers are rebuilding, it's like they could have something really special in his ability to play and his ability to mesh and be the right fit around some of the other players. So that could all be great. If it doesn't work out, and all the things that we heard about him that, people in Phoenix really didn't enjoy about having him on the team, or didn't appreciate about him on the team, and if it doesn't work, it's like, it's no risk. The Blazers are not in a position right now where they're trying to like bring somebody on the team to keep Damian Lillard. They're just, they need to pay somebody, and so they're going to pay him. But like, when you think about the experience that he's been through, I think it could be really valuable in terms of like telling other guys what it's like to be in that situation, demonstrating what it means to like be a good communicator. Like, I was successful when Devin Booker told me what was going on behind me. So if you can emulate that and tell me what's going on behind me, I'll be able to do the things that I was able to do there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And like, basically what happened is Phoenix and Portland traded centers, but it was like, I think there's something really interesting about that because both teams, you can argue, got better trading centers, which doesn't make any sense except for when you think about like the size of the role that's available in these two teams. And on our team, on the Blazers, like the size of the role is kind of undefined right now because so many things are undefined on this team. Now you look at the Suns, and the Suns had like Kevin Durant. They had Chris Paul last year. He's not there anymore, but like now they have Bradley Beal. They have Booker. Like all of a sudden, the size of the role is very defined, and they know exactly what they want those centers to be good at. And Ayton had he had more like bells and whistles than like they needed from him. And I think about how they I don't want to say they diminished his role, but like he had a certain role he had to play around these stars, and they weren't necessarily making use of all of the other things that he could possibly do and even grow to do because he's still so young. And they were like, why are we paying this? And you could tell that that was how they felt about him when they didn't give him a max contract. And they made him go out there. Like, even though he was very successful in that team, he helped elevate that team to what they are. They still made him go out there when he was a restricted free agent and get an offer that they could match. And I think back to this line that I read in one of the articles about him early after he had been drafted, and they're like, oh, like, do you feel like you've made it now? And he's like, no, I feel like I've made it when I signed that first max contract. Like, not this first one. This first one doesn't tell me I've made it. When I sign the next one that's max, I will know I have made it. And Phoenix experienced all that success. He was a huge part of them elevating their program. And then they withheld that from him. And they were like, go out and get a better offer, like from somewhere else, go out and get a good offer, and then we'll match. Like, that probably really hurt him. It would hurt me if that's how I was thinking about defining my success. And I was a big part of what helped elevate them as like a franchise. Like that, I feel like he might need a fresh start. Like I might need a fresh start, I'll say, if that had happened to me. And so maybe this is a welcome change for him to be on Portland, and he gets to define the size of his role a little bit more than like accepting this like neatly structured role that fits around superstars.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said. I think about his reaction video when he got to Portland, remember, and him talking about like him.
It was so sweet.
So excited how he felt like he'd been drafted. And after reading about this and learning more about him, it feels like this was another part of his life where somebody wanted him and was excited for him to be there. Like the last time he felt that way maybe was when he got drafted, and it's like his life has been marked by people saying what he should do and how he should be really good at all these things. And when you go through everything that you went through, you need some validation every once in a while. You need somebody to draft you number one. You need a team to say, we want you here because we think that you're going to fit in. So I'm a new DeAndre Ayton fan. I want I want what's best for him, and I want him to be happy so much. And I want him to fit in with this team, and I want him to find people who appreciate his full game, not just the fact that he's tall, to appreciate how hard he worked to be able to be nimble so that he could guard guards and give him, a chance to do all that and show that what he can do.
Yeah, the same. And also I want to go out on record and say that I ran a poll a couple of weeks ago about what jersey I should buy this season because I don't actually own a jersey for anyone that's on this team. And everybody, like the poll ended up everybody being Scoot. And I was like, fine. And I was like, but no, you guys won't realize I didn't even buy a damn jersey until last year. Like I'm not going to probably buy a Scoot jersey, but I decided after this week I'm buying an Ayton jersey. Ayton's going to be my guy. I want him to do well here. I am heavily invested in his success and him playing like the role that he wants for himself. And I love his mom. I'm very excited to cheer for him this year.
Yes. Two more things. There is a DeAndre Ayton Jr., so he does have a little one. And at least a few years ago, he had a dog, a beautiful husky looking, I think he might've been a husky mix, named Rocky. So we don't see really much of DeAndre Jr. or Rocky on the timelines. So we will be getting to know him more through social media. Have you noticed, like, I was like, before we did this, I was like, should we start doing social media player of the week? And I was looking at all of our players going, these guys don't do anything except for like share pictures of their what they were wearing. I've noticed a little, now that the season has started, a little bit more personality in him. So maybe we'll start doing those things. Fashion wise, what do you think about DeAndre? I think he comes with a pretty high bar. He looks nice and seems to. Have you seen his jewelry?
Yeah.
His jewelry is gorgeous.
If we were doing a like best accessorizer, DeAndre Ayton came to play.
Yeah. Yeah, that he has a 10 things GQ video, and you get some up close looks at his watches and his necklaces, and it's like, wow, those are gorgeous.
Oh, I have another point to bring up. I spent a lot of time reading about this nickname that he told us that he has, Dominatin', because that my position on nicknames is very strong, which is you don't get to give them to yourself.
Yes.
You don't get to nickname yourself. I'm sorry. We all know what that looks like. It never looks good. It never catches on. And I will just say, so far as I can tell, Devin Booker gave him that nickname.
Okay.
Several years ago in like 2020, 2019, Devin Booker gave him that nickname. Devin Booker called him that name. It's kosher, guys. We can do it. We can go with Dominatin'. He didn't pick it for himself.
I too did that research, and that's kind of where I landed. I did find a picture of him from 2019 wearing a shirt that says Dominatin'. There was a picture of him wearing a shirt, but then there's definitely another article where Booker says that he called him Dominatin'. So
yes. So I think we can accept this nickname. We don't have to like relegate it to the bench and be like, we'll see if this works out, because like there are people who call him that. He doesn't just call himself that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, should we? I could talk about him for a long time, but we should move on because we're getting at the end. So we should probably do takes. Do you have a take for this week that you want to share? What's your take?
I do have a take, and my take is this. I hope that Portland's teachers and the school district come to a deal soon. I want our teachers to be well resourced, and this is all like very like self-serving because my daughter is home because she's not in school right now. So this is, I guess, slightly political, but like what I want to say is I hope that they get the resources they need to like teach our kids well, help them be successful. And that also includes us getting our children back to school, because it's so hard to work with your child at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Thoughts out to the teachers. I do hope it has got to be so hard to be a teacher.
Yes.
And they make it, two of my kids want to be teachers, and they make it super hard to become a teacher. And then they make it super hard to be a teacher. And then they make it super hard to stay a teacher. And that is just so wrong if we care about our children as much as we're supposed to care about our children.
Yeah.
Like I understand you need to have like high expectations and a high bar for people who are working with your children, but like what you have to go through to get that accreditation is, and the amount of money that you have to spend to get there in order to spend more money to just take care of your classroom. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. My mom was a teacher. She was a teacher. She's retired now, but it was very hard for her to stay a teacher, become a teacher. Like she stopped working for a while when, she had me, and then to go back to teaching was super duper hard. It seems like an incredibly challenging process to navigate professionally, and anything we can do to make our teachers' lives easier so that they can give more to our children to help them be successful is like exactly what I want for the world. Teachers should be well paid, well resourced, so that our children can be successful and well resourced in their learning. That's all I have to say. That's my take.
All right. So recorded into the record. My take is a bit different. It is basketball related, and my take is Wemby for MVP. I'm just gonna say it. That guy is incredible. He is a delight to watch. He is breaking the game. He's doing things that like nobody should be doing, and like when you watch Jokic and it looks like he's in slow-mo, like Wemby, it looks like he's like, it could, because he can take 3 steps, which in a way, which is the same that 7 steps for a regular person. Just
right.
like, it's incredible. I love watching him. And I think we should just go ahead and give him the MVP, because he's going to change basketball. There's going to be rules that are changed because of him. And it's really exciting to have that happening right now. I'm super excited about it.
I am all here for the athletic big man. I think that that is like one of the more exciting things that we've seen kind of transition. And Wemby feels like the pinnacle of the athletic big man who moves like a guard, he gets his handles like a guard, and he's huge and long and smart and super fun to watch. Like I just like I'm like, well, like he's like the basketball singularity, you know. He can play center, he could be a point guard, he could be anything on the floor. And like, you know, I'm excited to see the rules that we change because Wemby exists and we know that we need new rules. Like
Mhm.
that's like what I like about, I don't know, like for anyone who watches baseball, that's what I love about Shohei Ohtani is that Shohei Ohtani has like people have figured out how to like measure baseball in every possible advanced metric like under the sun, and yet the metrics that they have decided on still don't capture what he does great, what he's like great at in baseball. When you talk about like a value that a guy can that can bring to your team who's a premier hitter and a premier starting pitcher, it's just impossible to think about. And everybody's like, oh yeah, like we have advanced stats, and I'm like, you don't capture this guy in your advanced stats, you don't quite see that. And I think that we're going to see the same thing about Wemby. Not that basketball is in the same place as advanced stats as baseball is, because it's just harder, but I don't think that we have like rules and statistics that will capture what is so great about watching Wemby play.
And it's just going to be so fun to watch everybody try to figure out how to talk about it and what to do about it. It's just going to be so much fun. It's a whole new era that's starting, and I'm excited.
Don't we feel like such bozos for wasting the nickname the unicorn on Kristaps Porzingis
Yeah,
when this is the real unicorn? Oh my
that's
god.
hilarious.
I'm sorry. You know what that looks like? That like Kristaps Porzingis looks like a horse with a cool mane compared to Wemby the unicorn.
I think we've got to go out on that. That was amazing. He looks like a horse with a cool name. Rose, where can people find more gems from you?
They could find me at Rose L. Harding on Twitter and on Instagram and on Blue Sky. And Tara, where can people find you?
People can find me at TCB Bigs on all of those places, and also Threads, which everyone's like, oh, NBA Threads is really happening. I don't know that I'm seeing that, but I'm open to the possibility. You can also find the podcast at We Have a Take we're on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, you can find us wherever you find your podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you so much. We're so excited that this season is underway and can't wait to talk to you more about it, Rose. Thanks for Rose. This is Tara. Go Blazers.